Learning to play a piece of music on the piano is a difficult thing to do, and that is why it is so useful to get feedback, and why I have been sent literally hundreds of people's performances asking for me to react to them. So today I'm going to do exactly that with a performance sent to me by someone called Jinwoo, who started playing the piano when he was 11 years old via Synthesia videos on YouTube, and then from the ages of 12 to 15, which is how old he is now, he's been learning with a teacher. However, the piece that he's playing in this video, which is Debussy's Arabesque No. 1, he has learnt by himself. So maybe I can help. Let's get into it. Very nice. So the Arabesque is a super interesting piece because there's so much movement in the piece that you can actually do quite a lot with it, and lots of people will make lots of different decisions about how to play this piece. However, for me, the opening part of this piece, and probably the most famous part, this part, to me, the thing that I picture in my head is water flowing up and down. When you are reading a piece of music and trying to work out how to play it, there are a lot of different factors that you can look at in order to determine how you play it. And one of those things is pitch. If you are playing something that's quite low and it moves quickly to something that's quite high, you want to contrast that in some way. So to me, I would probably start quieter and kind of expand outwards to the top, and then fall back down, and then expand outwards, and then fall back down. After that, there is a very clear melody that's introduced. In the music, there is actually some notes that have stems going both downwards and upwards, and the notes that are going upwards are essentially the melody. And then in the left hand, you have stems that are going downwards as well as upwards, and the ones that are going down are the bass notes. So to me, this is kind of expanding outwards. You've got the bass notes that are sinking, and you've got the melody, which is rising. So not only do you want to try and make that melody incredibly clear, because that needs to sit over the top of everything else that's going on, but also trying to make the music expand slightly. And then it resolves here. So you can make that feel like more of a special moment. Now, one of the most challenging parts of this piece is the fact that you have polyrhythms throughout the entire piece, and a polyrhythm is essentially where you have two different rhythms happening in each of your hands at the same time. So for most of this piece, you're going to get 3 notes in the right hand in the same amount of time as it takes you to play 2 notes in the left hand. So if I was to break that up, in the right hand you get 1, 2, 3 in the same amount of time as you're playing 1, 2 in the left hand. And that is actually quite a difficult thing to learn how to do. Now, I actually think Jinwoo rushed this section a bit. Here, it's supposed to be quiet, and this right hand is kind of falling down. And once again, I kind of get that waterfall feeling, something that's kind of falling down to the bottom. But it is also supposed to be back at the original tempo. So it would be nice if Jinwoo slowed it down slightly, at least at the start of the falling section, so that there's some momentum to gain, and also so that it matches the speed at the start of the piece. I would also probably really try and make sure that you hear groups of 3 in the right hand as well. Now, for this next section, we're kind of starting at the bottom and rising. So throughout this section, it does say to get louder, but I would get louder and probably slightly push the tempo as well, so it feels like it's building. And stringendo does actually mean to push the speed. So you've kind of got license to build the music and make it feel like it's really gaining momentum towards the top. And the top is here. And then it slows down into what we already know, material that we've already had, with one key difference. And that key difference is that this time we've got to hold the top notes, so that melody's got to sing out over the top. Also, with any repetitions that happen in music with material that we've already had, To a listener, that now feels very familiar. And when something sounds familiar, it's kind of really comfortable to listen to. It feels like we've kind of landed back where we started, like we've kind of returned home. So all of that together might sound something like this. Yeah, so once again, I would probably slow this down slightly so you can really hear the changes in chords, and also you can follow the contour of the melody. If the melody goes up, you want to hear it rise, and if the melody comes down, you want to hear it fall. Generally speaking, for all of the initial part of this section, it's kind of syncing. I think with this particular piece, although I know a lot of people play it fast, I think slowing it down just a touch so you can really feel the flow of the music, it allows you to bring the melody out slightly more and kind of help the piece tell the story. Then after this section, we get to this. Now, to me, most of this section feels very still, and we're really trying to create real warmth with the chords and feel where the resolutions are. So at the end of this section, we get a resolution here, which when there is tension and you're waiting for a resolution, it's a really good idea to kind of wait for it to make your audience feel the satisfaction when you actually arrive on the resolution. And the same thing kind of happens after that here. Here. If you can make people wait for that, then it feels really satisfying. Now, essentially for the rest of this page, you get this big build, and then it kind of pulls away for this chord at the top. Now, interestingly, the top note of this chord doesn't belong to the chord. This is an E chord, and an F sharp doesn't belong in an E chord. So that note is kind of overreaching the chord to then fall to the E, which is in the chord. And when you do this, this is called a suspension, because the note is kind of suspended over the chord and then falls into the chord. And once again, because that creates tension, you kind of want to lean on the tension and then soften off on the resolution. That way, it's going to sound super satisfying, because even if you don't know anything about music and you hear that chord, you feel that that note doesn't belong and that it needs to move to somewhere that does belong. Yeah, so this section I actually think he plays really, really nicely. At the end of the first phrase where you get this, once again, I would try and create tension and resolution on that suspension, because once again we have a note that doesn't belong to the chord, that falls to a note that does belong to the chord. Then for the section after that, interestingly, in the left hand, we kind of have groups of two notes. We have this, and then this. Each of those two groups is a tension and then a release, and then a tension and then a release. So once again, you can lean on the tension and pull off on the resolution. But also on the second note, you should taper that off so that it's much shorter than the first note. The first note joins to the second note, but you don't want this note connecting to the next group of two. Instead of, although connecting them and pedaling them does build the momentum, that kind of changes the feel slightly. It makes it feel like everything is growing rather than we're kind of moving in steps. Those are kind of two steps within the process of building. And then at the peak of this section, that actually reappears 4 bars later, but this time the left hand has a rest between the two notes. That's to make it sound a bit more impactful. Yeah, so interestingly, for this risoluto section, to me, this needs to feel stately and kind of strong and determined, rather than sounding hard and aggressive. So instead of getting something like this, I would play it in a much more rounded and open way so that it feels very authoritative. And then you can completely contrast that with the 4 bars that are after that, which kind of take you back into the beginning. So I will probably really slow down so that when we turn the corner back into this material, then it feels kind of special and warm, and we know where we are again. Yeah, so to me, when material returns like this, you don't want to play it in exactly the same way as the first time. And if anything, you want it to feel like home, like you're pleased to be back into something comfortable. So while Jinwoo seems to be pushing through this even more and making it slightly quicker, I would probably use even more rubato and stretch the time more so that you can really bring out those melodic lines. I mean, he is very expressive, which is really nice to listen to. So for me, this section, it needs to feel like it's kind of sinking, but it's getting warmer as it's sinking. These chords, as you sink down, kind of get richer as you go, but you still want to hear the contour of the melody, and you kind of want to escape that when you get to the end of this section where it goes. And then these arpeggios that go up and down like this, to me, need to be really dragged out, which once again is something familiar, so we're dragging out the tension of anticipating that. And then for the very ending, I would probably build this much slower as well, because this is the final moment of the piece. We're building up so we can play that E major chord at the top, so we need to kind of once again anticipate that. I think Jinwoo plays this incredibly well, and it's a really musical piece. And it's quite hard to make decisions about how you're going to play a piece while also trying to physically be able to play the piece. But I guess my overarching advice would be to try and translate what is happening in the music to some kind of narrative that you can tell yourself in order to be able to capture the feeling of the piece and translate that to someone that's listening. And that narrative doesn't necessarily have to be something special. It can just be, this part sounds watery, like I said for the first part of the piece. And then that gives you kind of mental and physical cues in order to be able to play the piece in a very musical way. If you want to see me react to more of my subscribers playing, then head on through and I will see you there.